Egyptian mythology is focused on the fundamental order of the universe, attempting to explain natural world patterns through divine actions. The creation myths, the constant struggle against disorder, and the cycles of death and rebirth are all particularly important in Egyptian mythology. The ancient Egyptians created a vast number of gods, some in animal form, others with human bodies and animal heads, and others in human form. The beliefs and rituals associated with these deities were central to ancient Egyptian religion. These deities represented natural forces and phenomena, and the Egyptians supported and appeased them through offerings and rituals to ensure that these forces functioned in accordance with Ma'at, or divine order. The various depictions of deities in art, as animals, humans, objects, and combinations of different forms, alluded to their essential characteristics. Join me as we explore and learn about some of Egypt's most well-known gods and goddesses, given that on our first encounter with the Egyptian gods, we needed more information to provide an amazing video and depiction of these gods. This time, more information and finer nuances about the divinities will be provided, in order to comprehend the Egyptian domain in greater depth in this new chapter, Egyptian Mythology Remake. Ra was the god of the sun, the supreme ruler of the Egyptian gods, and the creator of all things. He had several origin stories, but regardless of the story, Egyptian lore held that most of the major Egyptian gods were direct descendants of Ra. The pharaohs claimed direct descent from Ra as well, which they used to justify their rule. He had many literal forms, but he also expressed himself differently when combined with other gods. As the god Khepri, he carried the sun across the sky and back through the underworld on a mythical barge. When he was associated with the moon, one of the great and knowable creator deities, he became Amun Ra, representing the sun's raw universal power. He was not only the deity who ruled over the sun's actions, but he could also be the physical sun and day. Ra could be depicted in a variety of ways, but he was most commonly represented as a solar disk, as well as a man with the head of a falcon. He appeared in various forms and incarnations over millennia of worship, and remained the supreme Egyptian creator deity, as well as the god of kings, and the god of order. Ra had always been an important deity in Egyptian mythology, and became a pivotal figure in the Egyptian pantheon early on. Over time, his mythology began to merge with that of other gods, such as Atun, Amun, and Horus. Bastet, a feline-headed goddess in the ancient Egyptian pantheon, was a protector of pregnant women and a manifestation of the Eye of Ra. Originally a fierce deity, Bastet became more benevolent over time, and her aggressive tendencies were passed down to the goddess Sekhmet. Bastet was easily recognized in hieroglyphics as the cat-headed woman, carrying her namesake jar and a sistrum, both of which were decorated with feline motifs. Some early depictions of Bastet appear to indicate that she was a lioness, or lion-headed woman. Her representation, however, shifted over time to that of a domestic cat. Though the transition from lion to domestic cat may appear radical, it reflected a shift in Egyptian society. Cats had only recently been domesticated, and the Egyptians admired them for their ferocity and rapacity, while also admiring their nurturing parental tendencies. Bastet was frequently regarded as a gentler, kinder version of Sekhmet. Both goddesses were linked to the Eye of Ra and its destructive powers, but whereas Sekhmet was wrathful, Bastet was protective. While Sekhmet was associated with the more vengeful aspects of the Eye of Ra, Bastet could be fiercely protective and even ferocious at times. She was revered as a goddess of pleasure, a protector of pregnant women, and a ward against contagious diseases and evil spirits. Osiris, the Mighty One, was both a god of the dead and a central figure in Egyptian mythology, and he would remain one of the most prominent Egyptian gods for nearly 3,000 years. Mummification was a tradition that mirrored Osiris's own experiences, and as the god of the afterlife, he decided who was worthy of reincarnation. He was usually depicted as a mostly mummified king, wearing an atif, which was a combination of the hedged crown, 2 ostrich feathers, and 2 horns. The skin that was left unwrapped, which was usually his face and hands, was typically green or black. These colors were originally associated with decay, but they were later said to reflect Osiris's role in the cyclical nature of life and death, as manifested by plants. Osiris was frequently seen with a crook and flail in his hands. The crook, a symbol of Egyptian kings, was derived from shepherds' tools for tending to their sheep. Meanwhile, the flail has been interpreted as a whip or goad, representing the king's martial power, while others believe it represented a threshing tool symbolizing agricultural success. Cannibalism was widespread in ancient Egypt during Osiris's reign, so he sought to end it by introducing wheat, barley, grapes, wine, and copper tools to the Egyptians. After civilizing Egypt, Osiris embarked on an expedition to introduce agriculture to the rest of the world. However, before departing, he appointed his wife Isis to rule in his absence. While Osiris was absent, Isis ruled Egypt without incident. However, not everyone was pleased with the improved situation. Set, Osiris's younger brother, was envious of his brother's achievements and plotted to assassinate him. When Set assassinated Osiris, he dismembered his body into 14 pieces, thus becoming the king of Egypt, with his sister Nephthys as his wife. While some stories claim he scattered Osiris's body parts throughout Egypt, most sources claim he simply threw the pieces back into the Nile. In order to stop Set from repeating his prior escapades, after Isis recovered Osiris's severed body parts, she fashioned waxen duplicates of each body part and buried them individually. Local priests were assigned to guard each body part, and each was told that it was the true burial site of Osiris. While Isis's power was sufficient to resurrect Osiris long enough for Horus to be conceived, he would never return to the land of the living. Instead, Osiris went to Duat, the Egyptian underworld, to serve as Lord of the Dead, judging those who attempted to follow him into the afterlife. Set, the Egyptian god of confusion and disorder, was a cunning trickster. Despite playing an antagonistic role in Egyptian mythology, he was still an important figure in the Egyptian cosmos. He would eventually join Ra, riding on the front of the solar bark and defending it against Apophis, an elemental chaos beast. Set, as a trickster god, fought against the Egyptian concept of Ma'at, or divine order. He was more than just a force of chaos, he was the god of Kenenu, or confusion. Given Egypt's reliance on the Nile's waters, he was frequently associated with sandstorms, thunderstorms, and flash floods, all of which were regarded as destructive nuisances. While Set was a major god in the Egyptian pantheon, his mythology was dominated by Osiris. He was worshipped as a desert god in Upper Egypt, before being incorporated into the larger Egyptian mythos, following the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt. While he retained desert-centric traits, they did not fit neatly into the agrarian framework of Nile-bound Egyptian society. This inconsistency could explain why he was portrayed as a force of evil and disorder. Set's unwavering determination to destroy Osiris's body was a recurring theme in his myths. He would not give up until he completed his mission, no matter how many times he failed. While Set was able to briefly steal Osiris's corpse a few times, he was always apprehended and severely punished. Despite his great strength, Set met his match when attempting to steal Osiris's body from under Anubis's watchful eye. Anubis had enough of Set's misbehavior, and killed him, flaying his skin, and setting fire to his corpse. Set was a force for good in the afterlife, however, in contrast to the evil and destruction he had wrought in life. He rode in front of Ra's solar bark, protecting the sun god from Apophis, the great chaos monster. Apophis, commonly depicted as a colossal snake or crocodile, would attack Ra every night. Though Apophis could be killed, he would regenerate every day, necessitating constant vigilance. Horus, a pivotal figure in Egyptian mythology, was a complex and occasionally contradictory god. The ancient Egyptians believed he had many manifestations, each representing a different aspect of his being. Horus was believed to be the god of war and the sky, in the early stages of Egyptian religion, and he was married to the goddess Hathor. As both a sun and sky god, he was commonly depicted as a falcon-headed god with a double crown, and embodied kingship principles. The Egyptian pharaohs were associated with Horus, because the pharaoh was considered the earthly manifestation of the god. Horus was frequently depicted in hieroglyphics hovering over the pharaoh, and the Egyptian kings were often referred to as living Horus. The loss or theft of Horus's eyes was a recurring theme in his mythology, and Set was usually the perpetrator of such schemes. and Horus would frequently need the assistance of another deity to restore his vision. The Eye of Horus, or Wedget, represented Ma'at, or divine order, when it was intact, and any attack on the eyes was therefore an attack on the order itself. Horus's eyes were thought to be the sun and moon, though which one was which is unknown. While many stories mention Horus's eye being damaged, few go into detail about what happened to it. However, most accounts agree that Horus's injured eye was the moon, as the waxing moon was thought to be slowly healing, due to its significantly reduced brightness in comparison to the sun. Isis, one of the most well-known goddesses in the Egyptian pantheon, was Ra's granddaughter, Osiris's wife, and Horus's mother. While she was primarily renowned as a powerful sorceress and healer, she was also a devoted mother and wife. Her acts of healing and compassion were well known across the region. Nevertheless, anyone who threatened her loved ones did so at their own peril. Although she was known as Set by the ancient Egyptians, she is now better recognized by her Greek name. Her throne-like headpiece alludes to her name, which translates to Queen of the Throne. This symbol can also be seen in the ancient Egyptian inscription of her name. Isis was a goddess of paradoxes. She may be ferocious and vicious, yet she could also be empathetic and devoted. She was recognized for her acts of healing, yet her grief had the potential to kill innocent people. Isis gladly extorted her grandfather, in order for her unborn son Horus to gain the kingdom. Isis was a very multifaceted goddess, which may explain why her cult lasted so long. While other Egyptian gods were replaced or abandoned, Isis was revered well into the Greek and Roman periods. By the time of the Romans, she was thought to wield the power of fate itself, and for a long time, the popular belief in Greco-Roman civilization was that Isis created the world, and that all other gods were simply different names for Isis. She was converted into the queen of the universe and the personification of cosmic order after thousands of years of adoration. The cult of Isis is still alive today, as the goddess has become a part of modern paganism. Anubis, one of the most well-known deities in the ancient Egyptian pantheon, was a strong deity whose function evolved over time. He was worshipped as the god of the dead before Osiris and Isis rose to prominence. When Osiris took on the role as the god of the dead and the lord of the underworld, Anubis became the deity of cemeteries and embalming, as well as the defender of graves. The representation of Anubis as a jackal, or jackal-headed man, was intimately related to his background and duty as god of the dead. Jackals were associated with death, since they lurked around cemeteries and would eat decomposing flesh. Therefore, by making Anubis the patron deity of jackals, the Egyptians hoped to protect the bodies from being devoured. If Anubis was properly worshipped, it was believed that the jackals might not bother the venerated dead. The Egyptians, like any other culture or religion around the world, believed in paying respect to their dead. As a result, they performed elaborate ceremonies and mummification processes to aid the deceased's transition into the afterlife. Anubis's other function, according to the Book of the Dead, was to stand in the Hall of the Two Truths, and weigh the hearts of those seeking judgment. The human heart was weighed against Ma'at's feather of truth, and if the heart weighed more than the feather, the person's individuality would effectively vanish, as the hybrid deity Ammit would eat the heart and destroy the soul. However, if the heart weighed the same as the feather, the deceased would pass through the underworld and into the afterlife. Since the Egyptians believed in the notion of Ma'at, which represented order, harmony, and balance, death was deemed as vital as life. As a result, Anubis played an important role in the transition from life to death to reincarnation.